This is Selma Schimmel for the group room at ASCO's annual meeting in Chicago, and we are now joined by Dr. Paul Bunn, Executive Director of the International Association for the Study of Lung Cancer. The acronym is IASLC. Also, James Dudley, Professor of Lung Cancer Research at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. Thank you, Dr. Bunn.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are truly, really one of the world leaders in lung cancer. Everyone knows Dr. Paul Bunn and how lucky our viewers are that they get to have a firsthand update on lung cancer news here at the ASCO meeting from you.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that there's good news to present to your listening audience, because lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death in the world, and it's important that people know that the money that they invest through their taxes and the money that companies invest is paying off.
So let's talk about some of the clinical news that's happening here at ASCO. Last year was a big lung cancer ASCO meeting. What about this year?
One of the things that's been happening that's new is that there are molecular changes in small fractions of patients, and these can be identified, and there's drugs for these newly described what we call driver mutations. So one of the interesting things is that if you have one of these and you get a specific pill, the pill is highly likely to work and shrink your cancer and make you feel better, and these pills don't have a lot of side effects, but eventually you become resistant to them. And so we re-biopsy now at the time of progression to see not only why the thing was driving in the beginning, but how it got resistant later on. And so companies, of course, can make drugs that will affect the resistance. So in past years, we've had a lot of excitement about a drug called crizotinib, which is good for patients who have a driver oncogene called ALK. But in the presence of crizotinib, oftentimes there's a mutation in that ALK gene that prevents crizotinib from working. So drug companies made drugs that will work in the secondary mutation. And those were shown to have a response rate of about 80% in people who'd failed crizotinib, for whom there wasn't going to be any great treatment. So that's a small advance, but important. Everyone wants to know, well, what about the immune system? We have an immune system. The immune system should potentially be able to work whether you have an ALK mutation or an EGFR mutation or a KRAS mutation. So are we making any progress in immune therapies, and might these immune therapies be applied to patients irrespective of what driver oncogene they have? And not surprisingly, our immune system has things that stimulate it, but it also has brakes. It has things that inhibit it from attacking cancer. Because if the immune system goes too far, it may attack our normal body and cause a lot of problems in our body. So there's lots of brakes for the immune system. But cancers often use these brakes to their advantage to prevent the immune system from killing them. And so there's some proteins. One is called CTLA4 and one is called PD1. And these are brakes. And you can inhibit the brakes now with antibodies and other strategies. So these would be antibodies to CTLA4, and one of those called Yervoy, which is the trade name. Ipilimumab is the generic name. That was approved for melanoma last year, and that's being studied in lung cancer. But these PD1 therapies, anti-PD1 therapies, are new, and at this meeting there's some preliminary data that suggests that these are going to be pretty exciting in lung cancer.
New drugs in the pipeline, where do you see us going? How many compounds are in development now?
Hundreds, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it costs billions, not millions of dollars to get a drug approved.
And so much of the research doesn't yield, you know,
many
all
things
of
are negative.
Right.
Right. So just because something seems like it's going to work, and scientifically there's a rationale why it may work, it may not work. And so if we have 1,000 drugs and $1 billion for each drug to get it approved, do we have $1,000 billion to develop these drugs? And the answer is clearly we don't. And so clearly we need better strategies for drug development. Now, one of those strategies, of course, is to try to match the patient's tumor abnormality with the treatment. So we were talking about crizotinib a while ago, and the major trial that allowed crizotinib to get approved in lung cancer had 116 patients. Now, most studies in the past required thousands of patients to get a drug approval, and again, the reason for that is that the response rates and the benefit is much lower because you couldn't identify those people that were likely to respond or not respond. So a study that has 116 patients is a heck of a lot cheaper than a study that has, 3,000 people. So we need better drugs, better ways of identifying which drug will work for which patient, but we still need better designed trials that can allow us. I'll just give you another example. There's an oncogene called RET, and that oncogene was found to be mutated and abnormal most often in thyroid cancer. And a drug called vandetanib got approved for this specific mutation in thyroid cancer. That's a very rare cancer. So this abnormality is probably present in 1 or 1.5% of patients with lung cancer. Okay, so can you get a pharmaceutical company to go after a target that's rare? Fortunately, the drug was approved, so they can make some money on the drug and apply some of that money to study the drug in people with lung cancer. So we have to hope that we can design the right trial so that with 50 or 100 patients, we can show that this drug really has wonderful effects for this small fraction of the patients. We have regional meetings because we're an international society, and our next regional meeting will be here in Chicago in September, and that's also sponsored by ASCO and ASTRO, so we can try to get as many North American physicians and healthcare professionals in North America in a room at the same time. But then next year, 2013, we have the World Conference on Lung Cancer, which will be in Sydney, Australia in the fall. Nice place to visit, but a nice place to learn about lung cancer as well.
Thank you very much. Dr. Paul Bunn, Executive Director of the International Association for the Study of Lung Cancer, James Dudley, Professor of Lung Cancer Research, University of Colorado School of Medicine.
Thank you.